The galaxy believed. It dominated, until humanity changed everything. The Zephyrian Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its ceiling lost in artificial starlight that mimicked the view from their homeworld. Ambassador Krelthok adjusted his ceremonial robes, the golden threads catching the ambient light as he prepared to address the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. Around the vast circular table sat representatives from 47 species, each one a testament to the galactic hegemony's absolute dominion over 3 spiral arms. "Esteemed colleagues," Krelthok began, his voice amplified by bioacoustic enhancers that translated his words into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Today marks the 3,147th cycle of uninterrupted peace under our guidance. The lesser species continue to develop within their designated parameters, trade flows remain optimal, and our expansion into the outer rim proceeds ahead of schedule." A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. The hegemony had perfected the art of galactic management over millennia. They identified promising species early in their development, guided their technological advancement along approved pathways, and gradually integrated them into the vast economic machine that powered their civilization. It was a system that had never failed. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the exploration vessel Endeavour, watching the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. Somewhere in those depths, automated mining platforms extracted rare elements that would power humanity's next generation of fusion reactors. It was their 15th colony system, established just 2 years after they'd developed faster-than-light travel through their revolutionary quantum tunneling drives. "Sarah, you need to see this," called Dr. Marcus Webb from the communications station. His voice carried an edge of excitement that made her turn away from the mesmerizing view. The bridge of the Endeavour hummed with activity as her crew analyzed the strange signal they'd detected. Unlike the background radiation they'd grown accustomed to during their exploration missions, this transmission was clearly artificial, structured, and impossibly complex. "It's not from any of our colonies," Webb continued, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. "The signal originates from approximately 40 light-years away, near the galactic center. The encoding is unlike anything we've ever seen, but our AI systems are starting to make sense of it." Sarah studied the cascade of data flowing across the screens. Mathematics was universal, or so they'd always believed. But this signal contained mathematical concepts that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. Whoever had sent it possessed knowledge that made humanity's greatest achievements look primitive. "Captain," interrupted Lieutenant Torres from the sensor station, "we're detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout this sector. It's like space itself is being manipulated on a scale we can't even comprehend." The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity had been so proud of their rapid expansion, their innovative technology, their bold exploration of the galaxy. They'd assumed they were alone, or at least among the first intelligent species to achieve interstellar travel. The evidence now suggested something far more humbling and terrifying. They were not alone. They were not special. And they were very, very late to the party. On the distant world of Vextar, High Coordinator Zelmoth reviewed the daily intelligence reports with growing irritation. The automated monitoring systems had detected another unauthorized species engaging in faster-than-light travel. This made the 7th such discovery in the past standard cycle, and each one represented a failure of the hegemony's oversight. "How did they develop FTL technology without our guidance?" Zelmoth demanded, his 4 arms gesticulating in frustration. The holographic display showed the locations of human colonies spreading across a small region of the galaxy, like an infection. His aide, a nervous Cytherian named Voss, shuffled through electronic files. "The species appears to have originated from a planet designated Terra 3 in the Outer Rim." Our records show it was classified as pre-industrial just 500 cycles ago. Somehow they've advanced from primitive combustion engines to quantum tunneling drives in an impossibly short time span. Impossible, Zelmoth snorted. No species develops that quickly without assistance. They must have discovered ancient technology or made contact with another civilization. But as Voss displayed more data, Zelmoth's certainty began to waver. The human technology bore no resemblance to any known design principles. Their ships were crude by hegemony standards, held together with what appeared to be luck and determination rather than elegant engineering. Yet they worked, and they worked remarkably well. "Sir," Voss said quietly, "there's something else. Our deep space monitors have detected what appear to be weapons tests in the human systems. Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases." Zelmoth leaned forward, his interest piqued despite his annoyance. The hegemony maintained galactic peace partly through technological superiority. Their weapons could sterilize entire worlds or precisely eliminate individual targets from light years away. If some upstart species had developed comparable technology without their oversight, it represented more than just a bureaucratic inconvenience. Dr. Elena Vasquez had never expected her theoretical physics research to lead to the development of weapons. She'd been exploring exotic matter interactions, trying to understand the fundamental forces that held reality together. Her equations suggested the possibility of temporarily destabilizing the quantum foam that underlied all matter, creating localized reality distortions that could neutralize any known form of matter or energy. The prototype device hummed quietly in the secure laboratory beneath the lunar surface. It was elegant in its simplicity, barely larger than a briefcase, yet capable of effects that would have been considered magic just a century ago. When activated, it didn't destroy targets in the conventional sense. It simply convinced the universe that they had never existed in the first place. "The test was successful," she reported to the emergency session of the United Earth Council. "Complete molecular dissociation of the asteroid target with no residual radiation or debris. The weapon essentially erases matter from reality by disrupting its quantum signature." Council President Martinez leaned back in his chair, the weight of responsibility visible on his weathered face. "Dr. Vasquez, in your professional opinion, could this technology be defended against by conventional means?" "No, sir. The effect operates at a level below atomic structure. Shields, armor, even exotic matter barriers would be meaningless. The only defense would be to prevent the weapon from being deployed in the first place." The implications were staggering. Humanity had accidentally developed a weapon that could make them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. It was a responsibility none of them had wanted, but one they couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, intercepted communications from the mysterious signals suggested that humanity was not alone in the galaxy. There were other species, possibly dozens or hundreds of them, organized into some kind of galactic government. The translations were still incomplete, but references to lesser species and guided development painted a disturbing picture of a universe where humanity's independence was an aberration. General Harrison stood before a wall-sized display showing the strategic situation. Red dots marked human colonies, while blue areas indicated regions where the alien signals originated. "We're outnumbered, possibly thousands to one. They have technology we can't even understand, and they've been doing this for millennia while we were still banging rocks together. But we have advantages they don't know about," Dr. Vasquez added. "Our development has been chaotic, unguided, driven by competition and desperation. We've explored technological paths they might never have considered because they were too dangerous or unstable. That same unpredictability could be our salvation." The room fell silent as the leadership of humanity grappled with their new reality. They were no longer alone in the universe, but they might not be welcome either. The galaxy had its own rules, its own power structures, and humanity had developed outside that system. Ambassador Krelthak received the preliminary report on the human situation while presiding over a routine resource allocation meeting. He initially dismissed it as another minor administrative matter. Unauthorized FTL development was uncommon but not unprecedented. Usually, it indicated that some hegemony member had violated the non-interference protocols and provided technology to a developing species. But as he read deeper into the analysis, his comfortable assumptions began to crumble. The humans had developed not just FTL travel, but technologies that their best scientists couldn't fully explain. Worse, they'd done it in complete isolation, following technological paths that violated several fundamental principles of safe development. "Schedule an emergency session of the Strategic Council," he ordered his aide. Priority Alpha Classification. The Strategic Council hadn't convened an emergency session in over 2,000 cycles. It consisted of the most powerful and experienced leaders from each of the major hegemony species, individuals who had guided galactic policy through multiple crises and expansions. When Krelthak presented the human situation, he expected concern but not panic. He was wrong. "They've weaponized quantum foam manipulation?" gasped Counselor Vexith, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "That technology was banned 15,000 cycles ago after the Zarthak incident. It nearly tore a hole in reality itself." "And they developed it independently," added Counselor Morden, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "Without understanding the risks or implementing proper safeguards. They could accidentally destroy their entire solar system." But it was Counselor Ythara, eldest and most experienced member of the council, who voiced what they were all thinking. "Colleagues, we must consider the possibility that humanity represents something we've never encountered before. A species that develops advanced technology through chaos rather than guidance. If they continue on their current trajectory, they could become more powerful than the hegemony itself." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. The hegemony had maintained galactic supremacy for over 50,000 cycles. The idea that some primitive species could challenge that dominance was almost incomprehensible. "What do you propose?" Krelthak asked. "We have 3 options," Ythara replied, her ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia. "We can attempt to integrate them into the hegemony through diplomacy, which seems unlikely given their apparent independence. We can monitor them from a distance and hope they destroy themselves before becoming a threat. Or," she paused, letting the implication hang in the air, "or we eliminate them before they become unstoppable." The vote was closer than it should have been. In the end, the council decided on a modified approach. They would make contact with humanity, assess their true capabilities, and then decide on a course of action. But privately, many counselors had already made up their minds. Humanity's chaotic development and dangerous technologies made them an existential threat to galactic stability. The galaxy had operated under hegemony rules for so long that the idea of change seemed impossible. But as reports continued to flow in about human technological capabilities, a growing number of hegemony leaders began to wonder if their perfect system might have a fatal flaw. They had created a galaxy of predictable, manageable species. But in doing so, they had also created a galaxy unprepared for something truly unprecedented. Humanity was about to change everything, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. The galaxy believed it dominated, until humanity changed everything. The first contact protocols of the galactic hegemony had been refined over thousands of years and hundreds of successful integrations. The massive diplomatic vessel, Harmony of Spheres, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, with all the ceremony and overwhelming presence that 40 millennia of galactic dominance could provide. 3 kilometers long and bristling with technology that bent physics to its will, the ship was designed to inspire awe and immediate submission from primitive species. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the hastily upgraded Endeavour, now humanity's de facto flagship, and watched the alien vessels approach with a mixture of wonder and dread. The ship was beautiful in an alien way, its hull seeming to shift between states of matter as exotic energies played across its surface. It was also the most obviously powerful thing she'd ever seen. "Captain," reported Dr. Webb, "we're receiving a transmission. It's in perfect English." The main screen flickered to life, revealing Ambassador Krelthak in his full diplomatic regalia. His reptilian features were arranged in what humans might interpret as a smile, though Sarah suspected it meant something entirely different to his species. Behind him, the interior of the alien vessel stretched into impossible distances, filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. "Greetings, humans of Terra," Krelthak began, his translated voice carrying undertones of barely concealed condescension. "I am Ambassador Krelthak of the Galactic Hegemony, speaking on behalf of the civilized species of this galaxy. We have come to welcome you into the greater community and to discuss your rapid development." Sarah exchanged glances with her senior officers. The word discuss sounded more like investigate in the alien's tone. "Ambassador," she replied, hoping her voice didn't betray her nervousness, "we're honored by your visit. Humanity has wondered for a long time whether we were alone in the universe. We're eager to learn about the galactic hegemony and find our place in the larger community." Krelthak's expression shifted slightly, and Sarah caught a flicker of what might have been surprise. "Yes. Well, that is precisely what we need to address. Your species has developed certain technologies without proper guidance or oversight. This is unusual. We would like to understand how this occurred and ensure that your continued development follows appropriate safety protocols." Dr. Elena Vasquez, monitoring the conversation from Earth, felt a chill run down her spine. The alien's words were diplomatically phrased, but the underlying message was clear. Humanity had been developing without permission, and the galactic authorities were here to rectify that situation. The formal first contact meeting took place aboard the Harmony of Spheres, in a chamber that defied human understanding of architecture. Gravity seemed to operate according to different rules in different areas of the room, allowing representatives from various species to exist comfortably despite their wildly different physiologies. Sarah found herself sitting across from beings that looked like living crystals, sentient gas clouds contained in force fields, and creatures so alien that her mind struggled to process their forms. "The galactic hegemony has maintained peace and prosperity for 47,000 standard cycles," explained Counselor Vexith, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into dancing rainbows. "We have achieved this through careful guidance of developing species, ensuring that dangerous technologies are introduced gradually and with proper safeguards. Humanity appears to have bypassed this system entirely," added Counselor Morden, his massive bulk casting shadows across the table. "You have developed faster than light travel, exotic matter manipulation, and what our analysts believe to be quantum foam weaponization. These are technologies that typically require centuries of careful development and oversight." Sarah felt the weight of their attention like a physical pressure. "We developed our technologies through necessity and innovation. Earth has always been a competitive environment which drove rapid advancement. We didn't know there was an established system of galactic development." "That is precisely the problem," Krelthak interjected. "Unguided development leads to instability, conflict, and often self-destruction. The hegemony exists to prevent such tragedies." Dr. Marcus Webb leaned forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic caution. "But surely diversity in technological development is beneficial. Different approaches to the same problems can lead to breakthrough innovations that might never occur under a standardized system." The alien representatives exchanged what Sarah interpreted as concerned glances. It was Counselor Yith Ara, the ancient being whose species had been part of the hegemony since its founding, who finally responded. Young species often believe that chaos and unpredictability are virtues, she said, her voice carrying the weight of eons. However, the universe is vast and dangerous. There are forces and technologies that can destroy entire star systems if handled improperly. The hegemony's guidance prevents such catastrophes. Like the quantum foam manipulation you mentioned, Sarah said carefully. I assume you've encountered that technology before? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Vexith spoke, her crystalline voice carrying harmonics of fear. The last species to develop quantum foam weaponization independently was the Zarthak Collective, approximately 15,000 cycles ago. Their experiments destabilized local space-time and eliminated their entire home system. Not destroyed, eliminated, as if it had never existed. Sarah felt her blood turn cold. Dr. B. Vasquez had assured her that the quantum foam disruptors were safe, but apparently the technology was more dangerous than they'd realized. However, Mordun continued, the Zarthak were guided by hegemony protocols and had appropriate safeguards. The fact that humans developed this technology independently without proper understanding of the risks is deeply concerning. Back on Earth, emergency sessions were being held in every major capital. The revelation that humanity had unknowingly developed weapons capable of destroying star systems had sent shockwaves through the global leadership. Dr. Vasquez found herself at the center of a storm of questions, accusations, and demands for explanations she didn't have. Dr. Vasquez, demanded President Martinez during a secure conference call, you assured us that the quantum disruptors were safe. Were you aware of the potential for system-wide destruction? No, sir, she replied, her voice shaking. Our theoretical models showed localized effects only, but those models were based on incomplete understanding of quantum foam dynamics. If the aliens are correct about the Zarthak incident, then we've been operating with dangerous assumptions. General Harrison's image on the screen showed the strain of the past few days. The question is, what do we do now? The aliens clearly see us as a threat. They've been polite so far, but I get the impression that's only because they're still trying to figure out what we're capable of. The situation was complicated by humanity's discovery of their own limitations. While their quantum foam technology was apparently terrifyingly powerful, their other systems were primitive compared to hegemony standards. Human ships were slower, less efficient, and relied on brute force engineering rather than elegant solutions. In a straight military confrontation, humanity would be crushed. But the aliens didn't know that. The quantum disruptors had created an aura of dangerous unpredictability around humanity. The hegemony's representatives were treating them as equals, or at least as a significant threat, rather than a primitive species to be managed. Dr. Vasquez realized that this misperception might be humanity's greatest advantage. Aboard the Harmony of Spheres, the negotiations had taken an unexpected turn. What had begun as a standard integration briefing had become something resembling a diplomatic standoff. The hegemony representatives were clearly struggling with how to handle a species that didn't fit their established patterns. We propose a gradual integration process, Krelthak suggested. Humanity would be granted provisional membership in the hegemony, with full access to our trade networks and scientific databases. In exchange, you would agree to cease independent weapons research and submit your technological development to hegemony oversight. Sarah had been expecting something like this. The offer was generous by the aliens' standards, but it would effectively end humanity's independence. They would become another managed species, their development guided and limited by alien overseers. That's a significant decision, she replied diplomatically, one that would need to be made by the entire human population. Could you give us time to present your offer to our governments and people? Of course, Ythara said, though Sarah detected an undercurrent of impatience. However, we must stress the urgency of the situation. Uncontrolled quantum foam research poses risks not just to humanity, but to neighboring star systems. We cannot permit such experiments to continue indefinitely. The threat was politely veiled, but it was definitely a threat. Submit to hegemony control or face the consequences. As the meeting concluded and preparations were made for the human delegation to return to Earth, Sarah found herself in conversation with Dr. Thexan, a hegemony scientist who specialized in exotic physics. The being resembled a floating jellyfish made of liquid mercury, and communication required complex translation algorithms, but their scientific curiosity transcended species barriers. Your quantum foam manipulation technology is truly remarkable, Thexan said through the translation system. Our historical record suggests that most species require thousands of cycles to develop even rudimentary understanding of quantum substrate manipulation. How did humanity achieve such rapid advancement? Sarah hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Our development was driven by competition and resource scarcity. When multiple research groups are racing to solve the same problem, innovation happens quickly. Competition, Thexan repeated, the concept clearly fascinating to them. Within the hegemony, research is coordinated and shared among all member species. Duplication of effort is considered wasteful. But perhaps there are advantages to your chaotic approach that we have not considered. It was a small crack in the facade of hegemony superiority, but Sarah filed the information away. The aliens might be more advanced, but their system of controlled development had limitations of its own. The journey back to Earth was tense. The human delegation knew they carried the future of their species in their hands. The hegemony's offer of integration was reasonable from an objective standpoint, but it would fundamentally change what it meant to be human. They're scared of us, Dr. Webb observed as they reviewed their recordings of the meeting. Did you see how they reacted when we mentioned the quantum disruptors? For all their talk about guiding development and preventing catastrophes, they're genuinely afraid of what we might do next. Sarah nodded grimly. The question is whether that fear will work in our favor or against us. They might decide it's easier to eliminate the threat than manage it. Unknown to the human delegation, their assessment was remarkably accurate. Aboard the Harmony of Spheres, the hegemony representatives were engaged in heated debates about how to proceed. The initial plan of gradual integration was running into unexpected complications. They're not responding like a typical pre-integration species, Mordun complained. Most species are overwhelmed by first contact and eager to join the hegemony for protection and advancement. These humans seem suspicious. Their competitive development model has made them naturally resistant to external control, Vexith observed. They're accustomed to solving problems through conflict and adaptation rather than cooperation and guidance. Krelthak studied the analysis reports that his staff had prepared during the meeting. Human body language, stress patterns, and linguistic analysis all pointed to a species that was fundamentally different from anything the hegemony had encountered before. There's another issue, he said slowly. Our technical analysis of their ship design suggests that their quantum foam technology isn't their only dangerous innovation. Their faster-than-light drives operate on principles we don't fully understand, and their computer systems use quantum processing methods that could potentially break our encryption algorithms. The implications were staggering. The hegemony's power rested partly on technological superiority, but also on information control. If humanity could break hegemony encryption systems, they could access classified databases and communication networks throughout the galaxy. Recommendation? Asked Ythara, her ancient voice carrying notes of concern. Krelthak hesitated before answering. We need to understand their full technological capabilities before making any final decisions. But based on what we've observed so far, standard integration protocols may not be sufficient. We may need to consider alternative approaches. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for the most important decision in its history. The hegemony's offer of integration would bring access to technologies and knowledge that could solve every problem facing human civilization. Faster-than-light travel that didn't require massive energy expenditures, medical technology that could eliminate disease and extend lifespans, manufacturing systems that could create anything from pure energy. But it would also mean the end of human independence and the acceptance of limitations imposed by alien overseers. President Martinez addressed the emergency session of the United Nations with the weight of history on his shoulders. We face a choice that will define the future of our species. Do we accept integration into the galactic hegemony and gain access to technologies beyond our imagination? Or do we maintain our independence and risk conflict with a civilization that spans the galaxy? The debate that followed was unlike anything in human history. Scientists argued that hegemony technology could solve climate change, poverty, and resource scarcity within decades. Military leaders warned that refusing integration could mean extinction if the aliens decided humanity was too dangerous to be left alone. Philosophers and ethicists questioned whether humanity would still be human under alien guidance. Dr. Vasquez found herself at the center of the debate. Her quantum foam technology had made first contact possible, but it had also painted humanity as a potential threat to galactic stability. The aliens fear our technology because they don't understand it, she argued before a packed assembly hall. Their system of controlled development has made them predictable and cautious. They've forgotten what it's like to take risks and push boundaries. That's not a weakness on our part, it's our greatest strength. But even as she spoke, Dr. Vasquez couldn't shake the memory of the aliens' description of the Zarthak incident. Somewhere in the galaxy was a star system that had been erased from existence by technology similar to what she'd developed. The quantum foam disruptors might be humanity's salvation or their doom, and she was no longer certain which. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone had expected. By a narrow margin, the United Nations decided to reject immediate integration while leaving the door open for future negotiations. Humanity would maintain its independence, at least for now, but as the results were announced, monitoring stations around the world detected massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. The hegemony fleet was positioning itself around Earth, and their intentions were far from diplomatic. The time for negotiation was over. Humanity was about to discover whether their chaotic development and dangerous technologies were enough to survive in a galaxy that had no place for their independence. The galaxy believed it dominated, until humanity changed everything. The hegemony fleet materialized around Earth like a constellation of deadly stars. 47 ships, each representing a different member species, arranged themselves in perfect formation around the planet. Their combined firepower could have sterilized a continent in seconds, but they held position, waiting for humanity's response to their ultimatum. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood in the newly constructed command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching the tactical display with grim determination. The hastily assembled Earth Defense Force consisted of 38 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with weapon systems that had been theoretical just months ago. Against the hegemony fleet, they should have been completely outmatched. Should have been. "Admiral," reported Captain Torres from the Defiance, humanity's first purpose-built warship, "we're detecting massive gravitational distortions around the alien vessels. Their formation is designed to create overlapping defensive fields that would deflect or absorb any conventional attack." Stone nodded, studying the enemy positions. The hegemony had 40,000 years of military experience, and their tactical doctrine showed it. Every ship was positioned to provide mutual support. Every angle of approach was covered by multiple weapon systems, and their defensive arrays could probably stop anything short of a stellar mass projectile. Fortunately, humanity had stopped thinking conventionally a long time ago. "Dr. Vasquez," Stone said into her communicator, "are your teams ready?" From her laboratory on Luna, Dr. Elena Vasquez looked at the array of quantum foam disruptors that her research teams had assembled in frantic weeks of round-the-clock work. The devices had been refined since the first prototype, incorporating theoretical improvements that she hoped would prove effective against hegemony technology. "As ready as we can be, Admiral," she replied, though her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "The disruptors are untested against alien defensive systems, and we're still not entirely sure how they'll interact with exotic matter shields." "Understood. Stand by for my signal." The communication from Ambassador Krelthak came exactly on schedule, transmitted simultaneously to every government and media outlet on Earth. The alien's image appeared on screens worldwide, his reptilian features arranged in an expression of stern disappointment. "Humans of Terra," he began, "you have chosen to reject the generous offer of integration extended by the galactic hegemony. This decision demonstrates the dangerous unpredictability that makes your species a threat to galactic stability. You will cease all weapons research immediately and submit to hegemony oversight, or face the consequences of your defiance." President Martinez, broadcasting from a secure location, responded with words that would echo through history. "Ambassador Krelthak, humanity appreciates the hegemony's concern for galactic stability. However, we cannot accept limitations that would prevent us from defending ourselves or determining our own future. We propose a peaceful coexistence based on mutual respect rather than domination." The alien's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested that this response had been expected. "You misunderstand the nature of this situation, President Martinez. This is not a negotiation between equals. The hegemony has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for 47,000 years. We will not permit a single primitive species to destabilize that achievement." "Then we have nothing further to discuss," Martinez replied, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was saying. "Humanity will defend its independence." Krelthak's image flickered and vanished, replaced by targeting displays as the hegemony fleet began charging their weapons. Across Earth, billions of people watched their skies and waited to learn whether their species would survive the next few hours. Admiral Stone watched the energy readings spike across the alien fleet. 47 ships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city, were preparing to demonstrate why the hegemony had never lost a military conflict in recorded history. "All ships, implement Protocol Chaos," she ordered. The Earth Defense Force scattered like a school of fish, abandoning traditional formation, flying for seemingly random movement patterns. To the hegemony observers, it looked like panic. Human ships accelerated in impossible directions, their quantum tunneling drives allowing instantaneous velocity changes that should have liquefied their crews. The first hegemony attack came from the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, a Zephyrian vessel that had participated in 17 successful integration campaigns. Its primary weapon, a focused gravity beam capable of creating temporary black holes, lanced out toward the Earth ship Prometheus. The beam struck nothing. The Prometheus had shifted its position by several thousand kilometers in the instant between target acquisition and weapon discharge, using quantum tunneling technology that the hegemony had never encountered. "Impossible," muttered Fleet Commander Zexkar as he watched his tactical displays. "Their ships shouldn't be able to maneuver like that. The gravitational stresses alone should tear them apart." But the impossible had become routine for humanity. Years of chaotic development had taught them to embrace solutions that more cautious species would never consider. Human ships were built to survive forces that would destroy conventionally designed vessels, and their crews were trained to function under conditions that aliens considered lethal. The second wave of attacks came from multiple directions simultaneously. a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm human defensive capabilities. Energy beams, gravity projectiles, and exotic matter discharges filled the space around Earth with deadly force, and human ships danced between them like leaves in a hurricane. "Admiral," reported Captain Chen from the Endeavour, "we're taking no hits. Their targeting systems can't track our quantum shifts, and their weapons are too slow to compensate." Stone allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The first phase of humanity's defense was working better than anyone had dared hope. But she knew the aliens would adapt quickly, and humanity's technological advantages were limited. "Initiate Phase 2, she ordered. "All ships deploy quantum foam disruptors." Across the human fleet, hatches opened and strange devices emerged. The quantum foam disruptors looked deceptively simple, like metallic spheres surrounded by dancing fields of energy. But each one contained enough destructive potential to erase a capital ship from existence. Dr. Vasquez monitored the deployment from her lunar laboratory, her hands trembling as decades of theoretical work became lethal reality. "Disruptors armed and ready, Admiral. Remember, once activated, they can't be recalled. The effects are instantaneous and irreversible." "Understood, Doctor. Fire when ready." The disruptors activated simultaneously, their exotic energies reaching out toward the hegemony fleet at speeds faster than light itself. The weapons didn't travel through space in any conventional sense. Instead, they convinced reality that the distance between attacker and target didn't exist. Fleet Commander Zexkar watched in horror as 3 of his ships simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, but erased from existence as if they had never been built. The quantum foam disruptors bypassed every known form of defense, operating at a level of physics that the hegemony's most advanced scientists barely understood. "Retreat," he ordered, his voice cracking with panic. "All ships, emergency hyperspace jump." But the human fleet wasn't finished. As the hegemony ships attempted to disengage, they discovered that their hyperspace drives were malfunctioning. Unknown to them, human ships had been seeding the local space with quantum interference devices, creating fields that destabilized faster than light travel. "Admiral," reported Dr. Webb from his position aboard the Newton, "the interference field is working. They can't jump to hyperspace while we maintain the disruption." The hegemony fleet found themselves trapped in normal space with an enemy they didn't understand, using weapons that defied everything they thought they knew about physics. For the first time in 47,000 years, the galactic hegemony was facing defeat. But Fleet Commander Zexkar was a veteran of dozens of campaigns, and he refused to accept the impossible. "All ships concentrate fire on the largest human vessel. If we can't retreat, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." The combined firepower of the remaining hegemony ships focused on the Defiance, humanity's flagship. The energy discharge was so intense that it briefly outshone the sun, a display of destructive power that should have vaporized any ship ever built. When the light faded, the Defiance remained intact, protected by experimental shields that converted incoming energy into exotic matter that was immediately expelled into parallel dimensions. The ship was damaged, but functional. "Their shields are absorbing our attacks," reported Weapons Officer Yithvan from the hegemony flagship. "How is that possible?" "Our energy projectors operate at maximum theoretical efficiency." "Because," Admiral Stone announced over an open channel that reached every ship in both fleets, "humanity doesn't care about theoretical limits, we care about results." The final phase of the battle began with a demonstration that would reshape galactic politics forever. The human ships didn't just attack the hegemony fleet, they began systematically disabling their opponents' weapons and propulsion systems with surgical precision. Quantum foam disruptors were configured to eliminate specific ship components rather than entire vessels. Within 20 minutes, the entire hegemony fleet was crippled and helpless. "Fleet Commander Zexkar," Admiral Stone transmitted, "your ships are disabled, but your crews are alive. We're prepared to discuss terms for your withdrawal from our system." The silence that followed was deafening. In the hegemony's entire history, no fleet had ever surrendered to a primitive species. The concept was so foreign that Zexkar struggled to formulate a response. Finally, Ambassador Krelthak's voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral Stone, this engagement has been educational. The hegemony may have underestimated humanity's technological capabilities. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach to integration." "There will be no integration," President Martinez interjected, his voice carrying across space to every ship in the system. "Humanity offers friendship and cooperation, but we will not submit to alien oversight. We propose a new model for galactic civilization, one based on voluntary association rather than enforced conformity." The proposal was revolutionary in more ways than one. For 47,000 years, the galaxy had been organized around the principle of guided development under hegemony oversight. The idea that species could interact as equals, sharing technology and knowledge without centralized control, was utterly foreign to established galactic culture. But as reports of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. Species that had been integrated into the hegemony decades or centuries ago began asking questions about their status. Why did they need alien guidance to develop their technology? Why couldn't they explore dangerous research paths if they were willing to accept the risks? On the distant world of Kithara, junior researcher Voss received the classified reports about the human conflict with growing excitement. The humans had achieved technological breakthroughs that the hegemony considered impossible, and they'd done it through uncontrolled experimentation and competitive development. What if chaos isn't a flaw to be corrected? He wondered aloud, earning concerned looks from his colleagues. What if it's a feature that enables innovation? Similar conversations were taking place throughout hegemony space. Scientists who had spent their careers following approved research protocols began questioning whether those limitations were necessary. Military officers wondered why their fleets had been unable to adapt to unexpected tactics. Politicians questioned whether the hegemony's rigid structure was actually a source of strength or weakness. Ambassador Krelthak found himself in the unprecedented position of negotiating with a species that had defeated hegemony forces in direct combat. The standard integration protocols were useless. Humanity had demonstrated that they were capable of destroying any fleet sent against them, and their technological advantages were growing rather than diminishing. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked during the emergency negotiation session held aboard the disabled hegemony flagship. "A galactic federation," replied President Martinez, "where species interact as equals, sharing knowledge and technology voluntarily rather than through coercion. Humanity's chaotic development model has proven effective. Imagine what could be achieved if every species was free to explore their own technological paths." The idea terrified and fascinated the hegemony representatives in equal measure. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of controlled development and centralized authority. A galaxy where species developed independently, following their own interests and exploring dangerous technologies without oversight, seemed like a recipe for chaos and destruction. But it was also a galaxy where breakthroughs like humanity's quantum foam disruptors could emerge from any species at any time. The potential for rapid advancement was enormous, even if the risks were equally significant. Dr. Thexan, the hegemony scientist who had shown interest in human development during the first contact meeting, spoke up from his position as an observer. "The humans have achieved more in 500 cycles than most species accomplish in 5,000. Their competitive development model produces results that our guided approach cannot match. It also produces weapons capable of erasing star systems," countered Counselor Vexith. "The risks are enormous." "The risks of stagnation may be greater," Dr. Thexan replied. his translated voice carrying unusual conviction. The hegemony has maintained stability for 47,000 cycles, but at what cost? How many potential breakthroughs have we prevented? How much progress have we sacrificed for the sake of safety? The debate that followed would continue for months, but the outcome was already clear to anyone paying attention. Humanity had demonstrated that alternatives to the hegemony system were not only possible, but potentially superior. Other species would inevitably begin experimenting with independent development, and the galaxy's power structure would never be the same. 3 months after the Battle of Earth, the first Galactic Federation convention was held on a neutral space station constructed specifically for the purpose. Representatives from 23 species attended, including several that had formally withdrawn from hegemony oversight. The convention established principles that would have been unthinkable just a year before. Species would be free to develop their technology without external interference. Knowledge sharing would be voluntary rather than mandatory. Conflicts would be resolved through negotiation rather than force. Not all species joined the new federation. The hegemony still controlled vast regions of the galaxy, and many species preferred the safety of guided development to the uncertainties of independent research. But the monopoly on galactic civilization had been broken, and alternatives were emerging. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Federation's first joint research station, watching ships from a dozen different species collaborate on projects that would have been forbidden under hegemony oversight. Human quantum foam technology was being combined with alien gravitational manipulation systems to create entirely new forms of faster-than-light travel. Crystalline computers from Vexith species were being integrated with human quantum processing units to develop artificial intelligences more advanced than anything previously imagined. Regrets? Asked Dr. Webb, joining her at the viewport. About developing the quantum disruptors? Sometimes, she admitted. They're incredibly dangerous, and every time we use them, we're gambling with forces we don't fully understand. But without them, humanity would have become just another hegemony client species. Our independence, our ability to innovate and explore dangerous ideas would have been lost forever. The galaxy was changing in ways no one could have predicted. Species that had been stagnant for millennia were experiencing technological renaissances as they embraced chaotic development models. New alliances were forming based on shared research interests rather than political convenience. The rigid hierarchies that had defined galactic civilization for 40,000 years were giving way to networks of voluntary cooperation. It wasn't a perfect system. Independent development led to accidents, conflicts, and occasional disasters when species pushed too far too fast. But it also led to breakthroughs that transformed understanding of physics, biology, and consciousness itself. Admiral Stone, now serving as humanity's first representative to the Galactic Federation Council, reflected on how far they'd come during her weekly report to Earth. The galaxy believed it was dominated by a system that had lasted 47,000 years. They thought stability and control were more important than innovation and growth. Humanity proved them wrong. The irony wasn't lost on her. A species that had developed faster-than-light travel in isolation, using technologies that the galaxy's experts considered impossible, had become the catalyst for the most significant political and technological transformation in galactic history. But perhaps that was fitting. Humanity had always thrived on impossible challenges and chaotic solutions. They'd survived ice ages, world wars, and the transition to spacefaring civilization through adaptability and innovation rather than careful planning. Now they were helping the galaxy learn the same lessons. The message transmitted from Earth to every inhabited system in the galaxy was simple but profound. The universe is vast and full of possibilities. Don't let anyone convince you that there's only one way to explore them. As Ambassador Krelthak filed his final report on the human situation, he found himself using words that had never appeared in a hegemony document before. Recommendation: the Galactic Federation model should be studied and possibly adopted on a trial basis. Humanity's chaotic development approach has produced results that exceed all previous theoretical projections. The galaxy had believed it was dominated by the eternal wisdom of controlled development and centralized authority. Humanity had changed everything by proving that chaos, competition, and independence could produce results that careful planning never could. The age of hegemony dominance was ending. The age of galactic freedom was just beginning.